This video is going to talk a little more about what is a parameter. A parameter is a really important idea for our course. So a parameter, this is the book's definition, is a numerical summary of a population. Let's look at this for a second. So we've got numerical summary here. What is that? All that means is a parameter is a number. It's a summary of a population. What did we say the population was? It's the group of individuals that we are interested in. And a lot of times the population is very large. And that's what makes parameters a little bit mysterious sometimes. For example, we looked at the idea of the number of red cars in the United States. And I know this is pretty simple, but I just want to again talk about this idea because this is a parameter. Maybe there's 100,000 or maybe there's 200,000 cars that are red. I don't really know. But there is a number of red cars in the United States. Just to hit on the vocabulary a little bit more, the population in this example is all cars in the United States. That is a group of individuals, in this case a group of cars. And what's weird about this number, the number of red cars in the United States, is that it's unknown. And what's a little bit humbling is that it will probably always be unknown. How would you find the number of red cars in the United States? You would have to count every single car that is red in the United States. Well, the population here is a lot of cars, and counting those cars is going to be really, really difficult. So this number, the number of red cars in the United States, is typically not going to be known. So a lot of times this is going to happen with parameters. Parameters will be unknown, which makes them a little bit harder to think about because they're quantities. The number of red cars in the United States is a quantity, but it's a quantity that we don't know. That's a really important idea. I'm going to write that down. It's so important. Parameters are usually unknown. They are not known. And that makes them a little bit harder to think about, but they are just numbers, and they are numbers that describe the population. So let's look at a few examples of parameters. And we said that parameters were numbers that describe a population, and sometimes we might say population of interest instead of just population. The same thing. Suppose our population of interest were adults in the United States. So that's a group of people, and a number that describes that group of people is a parameter. For example, we might want to know the percentage that are married, or we might want to know the average age of adults in the United States, or we might want to know how many are older than 70 years old. These three things that I've listed here are all numbers, and they're all numbers describing this population. You'll notice that they're different types of numbers. This first one is a percentage. This second one is an average. This third one is a count, but these three things are all different types of numbers, and they're all numbers that describe this population of interest, and so all three of them are parameters. Or, for example, maybe our population is schools in Africa. So instead of measuring people, our individuals in this case are a school. We might want to know the average number of students, Or we might want to know the proportion that are high schools, or we might want to know the total number of teachers. These are three different quantities here that are all describing this population of schools in Africa. Again, they're different types of numbers. One is an average, one is a proportion, and the third one is just a count. Three different types of numbers, but they're all three parameters. So listed here, we have 6 different numbers that are parameters, and you'll notice that all of these 6 things are pretty difficult to know. These populations are large. There's a lot of adults in the United States. There's a lot of schools in Africa. So that's where statistics comes in. We can use statistics to try to estimate, to try to give educated guesses on what we think the values of these numbers are. Because you can imagine that would be really useful. It would be useful to know the average number of students in schools in Africa. If that was really high, you might think, well, maybe they need more schools if there are too many students at every school.